The sun hung low over Elmwood Avenue, painting the sidewalk in honeyed light as Omar Carter dribbled his basketball with effortless rhythm. At 12 years old, Omar's world consisted of the three-point line, the feel of leather against his fingertips, and dreams of making that perfect shot. He had moved to this quiet neighborhood just weeks ago with his mother, Governor Lydia Bennett, and though some kids warned him Elmwood was too small for big dreams, Omar saw promise in every echoing bounce. This afternoon, Omar's dark curls bobbed as he jogged down the driveway. His sneakers squeaked against the pavement. The world felt warm and safe. The ball leapt from his grip, an imperfect shot that arced high before landing in the neighbor's yard. Without a second thought, Omar bounded after it, laughter spilling from his lips. But unseen eyes watched. Behind the lace curtains of the Morgan household, Jessica Morgan, a woman in her late 40s, precise in appearance and cautious at heart, paused her afternoon tea. A black boy stepping gingerly onto her freshly manicured lawn triggered unease she could neither explain nor dismiss. Her throat tightened and her fingers gripped her phone as she dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? There's a child trespassing. Jessica's voice trembled slightly but remained firm. A young black boy. Send someone quickly. Down the street, sirens sliced through the golden afternoon. Omar, kneeling by the fence, heard the distant wail and froze. A basketball forgotten, his eyes darted from the approaching patrol car to the open gate. Two officers stepped from their vehicle, Officer Ramirez, with kind eyes but a stiff posture, and Officer Mitchell, whose jaw was set, ready for confrontation. Omar's heart pounded. He stood slowly, hands raised with no weapon other than a basketball. I'm just picking up my ball, Omar said, voice barely above a whisper. His knees trembled. Jessica stormed onto her lawn, clutching her phone like a shield. That's him, she declared. I saw him through my window. He doesn't belong here. The words dripped with accusation, and a group of onlookers gathered on their porches, drawn by the flashing lights. Officer Ramirez stepped forward. Son, can you step this way? He said softly, gesturing toward the patrol car. Omar glanced at the open car door, confusion and fear swirling in his eyes. Can I call my mom? He asked, his voice trembling so much that Ramirez nodded. Sure, son, go ahead. Officer Mitchell's scowl softened as Omar dialed. At that moment, Lydia Bennett sat in her governor's mansion study, reviewing notes for a speech on community unity. Her phone buzzed on her desk. She saw her son's trembling voice on the line and left her papers scattered as she rushed to the waiting black SUVs. While Omar waited against the patrol car, Jessica crossed her arms, head held high. Kids like him are never up to innocent games, she muttered under her breath, though a few neighbors heard and exchanged uneasy glances. Moments later, a convoy roared down Elmwood Avenue. SUVs and police cruisers blocked both ends of the street as sirens wailed in unison. Omar's basketball lay forgotten in the grass as engines thundered. Lydia Bennett stepped out, black pantsuit crisp, hair impeccable, presence unmistakable. The crowd parted instinctively. Jessica's jaw fell open. Lady, what's going on? Someone whispered. Lydia strode toward her son. Omar, are you all right? She asked, concern shining in her eyes. Omar's relief was palpable as he flung his arms around her. Turning to the officers, Lydia's voice was calm but commanding. I understand there was a misunderstanding. Officer Mitchell swallowed. Governor Bennett, ma'am, a report came in. Of my son retrieving his basketball? Lydia finished for him, gaze fixed on Jessica. And what evidence prompted that call? Jessica's voice trembled, her composure unraveling. I saw him in my yard. You thought he was a threat. Lydia's words were not loud, yet they cut through the hush. Because he is black? Jessica's face paled. Neighbors shifted uncomfortably as Lydia continued. This child crossed an unmarked line because your fear created one. A simple act of retrieving a ball does not warrant police intervention. Heads nodded around the lawn. Whispers of, that's right, and unbelievable, rippled through the crowd. Lydia addressed the officers again. Release him immediately and ensure no record is made. This neighborhood will attend bias awareness workshops to prevent future incidents. As Lydia led Omar away, she paused by Jessica. Fear without cause breeds division. Be better. And with that, mother and son disappeared into the convoy. The afternoon that began with a basketball bounce ended in stunned silence. Mrs. Morgan retreated indoors, shame burning in her cheeks. Reflection. From the first siren to the governor's intervention, fear and power clashed on Elmwood Avenue. Quantitatively, this scene unfolds over a tense 3-minute sequence, roughly 480 words, keeping viewers' attention tight. Personally, I felt my chest tighten seeing Omar's fear, then swell with hope as Lydia stepped in, a perfect hook for minute one engagement. Dawn's first light spilled over Elmwood Avenue, but the neighborhood awoke not to birdsong, but to the hum of promise. Under a pale sky, volunteers in bright blue Unity Park t-shirts unloaded basketballs, paint cans, and banners from a rented truck at the vacant lot beside Jessica Morgan's house. Orange traffic cones guided families toward folding chairs and picnic tables. A large sign, "From Fear to Friendship, Elmwood's Unity Park," fluttered in the morning breeze, its message clear. Inside her home, Jessica stood by the window, heart pounding. All around her, neighbors she had once frightened with a single phone call were arriving to build and to forgive. She swallowed hard, smoothing her skirt, and stepped outside. The crowd hushed as she climbed onto a small wooden platform draped in blue fabric. "Good morning, everyone," Jessica began, voice trembling but growing stronger. "Yesterday, my fear and my assumptions led me to call the police on a child who only wanted his basketball back. I'm deeply sorry. Today we have a chance to turn that mistake into something positive." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Children in sneakers raced around piles of new basketballs. Parents exchanged hopeful smiles. A local DJ spun up beat tracks, and a volunteer handed Jessica a microphone. "Thank you," she continued. "Thank you for forgiving me and for joining me in building Unity Park. This court is more than asphalt and hoops. It's a symbol that when we overcome fear, we can choose connection." Applause swelled. At that moment, Omar Carter emerged from behind a cluster of volunteers, his natural optimism shining. His 12-year-old grin grew wide as he spotted the gleaming new courts and rows of basketballs. "Hey, Jessica," he called, dribbling a ball in gentle circles. "Ready to play?" Jessica smiled through tears. "Show me how it's done, champ." They walked down together, step by step, reclaiming trust. Under a gazebo, a long table held marker pens and poster boards where children and adults wrote messages. "Everyone belongs. Stop before you judge. And one bounce, one world." Omar scrawled his own, "I am Omar. I am more than my color." Jessica wrote beneath it, "We're learning together." By mid-morning, local news trucks rolled in, capturing volunteers painting half-court boundaries, blue on one side, orange on the other, meeting perfectly in the middle. Reporters interviewed neighbors, Mrs. Alvarez, who baked cookies for the crew, Mr. Singh, who donated 2 pallets of sports water, teenagers who organized pickup games. Even Officer Ramirez appeared, grinning as he painted the net posts and promising to play defense during next week's opening tournament. Across town, social media exploded. Unity Park flooded timelines. Within hours, a GoFundMe set up by Omar's school exceeded its $20,000 goal. Comments ranged from, "This is hope in action," to, "Elmwood, you're showing the world what community looks like." Meanwhile, at the governor's mansion, Lydia Bennett watched footage of children laughing, of Jessica and Omar high-fiving. She turned to her chief of staff. "Schedule a press release. I want to declare the last Friday of this month State Unity Day, a day for all communities to build bridges." Back on Elmwood Avenue, the transformation was complete by noon. Kids raced across the court, sneakers squeaking as coaches blew whistles. Walls of the nearby recreation center, once bare cinder blocks, now boasted a vibrant mural, a basketball arcing toward a sunrise, beneath the words, "Together we rise." Under a shelter tent, community leaders hosted the first bias awareness workshop. Chairs formed a circle, name tags glowed with ink. Asha, Carlos, Maria, Jessica, Ali, Omar, and more. A facilitator guided participants through role play. 2 volunteers acted out a newcomer entering an unfamiliar yard. One played the homeowner, the other the child. Audience members called out feelings: confusion, fear, loneliness, and then empathy, connection. Jessica watched tears well in some eyes. Others furrowed brows in understanding. When it was her turn, she stood trembling. Yesterday, I was the homeowner. I was afraid. But now, standing here, I feel how wrong I was. I want to listen, learn, and lead by example. Omar squeezed her hand. You're doing great, Mom, he whispered. Workshop participants broke into small groups, sharing stories of times they felt judged or misunderstood. Mr. Thompson, a retired teacher, recalled an afternoon he assumed a new student was trouble, only to learn she was a refugee who spoke little English. He explained how they became lifelong friends once he asked, rather than assumed. By late afternoon, families gathered for a friendly free throw contest. Jessica, Omar, and Officer Ramirez formed a three-person team against local teens. Laughter echoed as Jessica missed her first shot, only to block a rebound and pass to Omar for the winning basket. Cameras flashed, cheers rose. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, Jessica stood at the edge of the court, watching Omar effortlessly sink shots during a pickup game. She reflected on the past 24 hours, how an impulsive 911 call had nearly escalated to tragedy, and how a community's willingness to forgive had flipped the script. A teenage volunteer approached, holding a tablet. Mrs. Morgan, the students finished editing the short film about yesterday's events. Would you like to see it? Under the pavilion, chairs had been rearranged into a small theater area. The projector flickered to life, casting scenes of Omar's pale face against the patrol car, Lydia's composed arrival, and the crowd's shifting expressions. The soundtrack swelled with hopeful strings. Omar's voiceover played, I just wanted my ball back, but what I got was a chance to bring us together. When the credits rolled, Jessica rose to her feet, voice catching. This film, it shows how one small act of fear can ripple into something much larger. But it also shows how one act of courage, by my son, by our governor, by everyone here, can turn that fear into unity. Will you join me in sharing this message beyond Elmwood? Hands shot up, phones recorded. Shouts of, yes, and we will, filled the air. As dusk settled, volunteers packed up tables and chairs. The newly painted court glowed under street lamps. Families strolled home, some lingering for last baskets, others planning the next workshop. Jessica and Omar walked side by side, bouncing a basketball between them. Thank you, Jessica said softly, for teaching me what real courage looks like. Omar grinned. Thanks for trusting me to be more than your fear. They paused beneath the Unity Park sign, its letters illuminated in warm light. In that moment, Elmwood Avenue wasn't just a street. It was proof that communities can transform fear into friendship. The next morning, the world felt different on Elmwood Avenue. The air was sharp with promise and softened by the glow of sunrise. Here, where just days ago suspicion had reigned, laughter now echoed off the newly painted court. Children wove between painted lines, their faces alive with the thrill of normal childhood games. Yet nothing here was ordinary anymore. Unity Park had become a living testament to change, and as the first light touched the mural of an arcing basketball, its colors seemed to hum with possibility. Omar Carter arrived early, his sneakers squeaking against the smooth court as he practiced free throws alone. He remembered the fear in his chest when sirens had first blared, and the relief that rushed through him when he saw his mother stride from the convoy. Now, every bounce he made was a celebration of new beginnings. He dribbled twice and launched the ball. The satisfying swish felt different today, as if the net itself recognized how far Elmwood had come. Across the court, Jessica Morgan stood with her arms crossed, watching him with a mixture of pride and humility. She thought back to the moment her fear had taken control, to the shame that had washed over her when Governor Bennett had called her out. Yet here she stood, not as a defendant, but as a leader in a movement she had once nearly derailed. She reminded herself that humility and responsibility often grew from the soil of regret, yielding strength she had never anticipated. As the clock edged toward mid-morning, neighbors began to gather beneath the shade of the oaks lining the court. Mr. Thompson, the retired teacher whose tears had broken down so many walls, greeted parents with warm handshakes. He had arranged for local bakeries to bring pastries and coffee. Across from him, Officer Ramirez set up chairs for families who needed a place to talk through lingering uncertainties. Even the local news crew from Channel 7 had returned, cameras rolling as families formed into small groups, ready to share how Unity Park had touched their lives. The center of the court held a long table draped in a banner proclaiming Elmwood's commitment to inclusion and justice. On it rested a stack of idea booklets in which residents could propose events, clubs, and workshops to sustain the momentum. Jessica had spent the previous night designing a schedule that included monthly film screenings, basketball clinics for at-risk youth, and rotating neighborhood potlucks. She traced her finger over the printed names: Family Night, Voices of Elmwood, Ballad of Bounces, each title a promise of togetherness. Before the formal ceremonies began, Lydia Bennett appeared at the court's edge, her tailored suit contrasting gently with the relaxed atmosphere. She greeted Omar with a hug, tousled his hair, and stepped forward to address the crowd. Her voice carried the authority of the governor's office, but also the warmth of a mother's care. Elmwood has shown our state what it means to bridge divides, she began. What started as a misunderstanding has become a blueprint for unity. Here, each of you chose empathy over suspicion. You chose to see a child, not a stranger. And because of that choice, you've built more than a court. You've built a community. Applause rippled through the crowd. Some wiped tears, others nodded, remembering how quickly fear can harden the heart. Lydia continued, announcing a statewide initiative. Every community would receive a grant to develop a similar Unity Park model and participate in bias awareness training. She emphasized that the greatest defense against prejudice was human connection. One conversation, one shared game, one open court at a time. With the formal announcements complete, the crowd shifted seamlessly into activities. Omar joined a pickup game with friends from across Elmwood, exchanging high fives as every basket, each one echoing through the court, felt like a declaration of belonging. Jessica navigated between groups, listening as residents suggested cultural exchange events, neighborhood block parties, and after-school mentoring. Every idea was met with enthusiastic nods. The energy was electric. Meanwhile, beneath the shade of a nearby tree, small clusters formed around whiteboards detailing the grant application process. Parents and local business owners pooled their expertise, drafting budgets and volunteer rosters. A few feet away, teens filmed interviews on their phones, capturing Emmy, a fifth grader, explaining what Unity Park meant to her, a place where she could play without fear. Her frank sincerity reminded everyone that the legacy of this day belonged not to the adults, but to the children who would inherit this world. By afternoon, the sun climbed higher, and families retired to picnic blankets, sharing sandwiches and stories. Jessica accepted an offer of lemonade from Mrs. Alvarez, the neighbor who had baked cookies on opening day. They laughed over childhood memories, marveling at how quickly mistrust could give way to memories of community potlucks and summer nights spent shooting hoops. As the sun began its descent, Omar and Jessica returned to the court center. There, beneath the mural's painted sunrise, they unveiled a time capsule, an old basketball inscribed by residents with words like hope, courage, and friendship. Each signature represented a vow to remember how far they had come and to safeguard the unity they had forged. Omar placed the ball into a sealed metal tube. Jessica locked the capsule and smiled down at him. "Every child who plays here will know the story our signatures tell," she said softly. Omar's gaze wandered to the mural, to the children playing, to the faces of neighbors turned friends. "I hope they bounce it just as far as we did," he replied. Night settled gently, and string lights flickered on around the court, bathing Unity Park in a warm glow. Residents lingered, reluctant to let the day end. A local musician, recruited by Mr. Thompson, tuned his guitar and began playing a soft melody. Voices joined in, neighbors singing lyrics of unity and hope. For a moment, differences melted away in the hush of shared song. As the final chords faded, Jessica stood and raised her glass of lemonade in a quiet toast. "To Elmwood," she said, voice clear, "to every basket, every conversation, and every moment that brought us together. May we always choose to bounce forward, never back." The crowd cheered, glasses lifted, and the echo of that cheer lingered in the warm night air. Walking home later, hand in hand with Omar, Jessica felt a new confidence glimmer in her chest. "We did it," Omar said, voice soft. "You did it, Mom," Jessica corrected with a smile. "We did it together." Under the streetlights, they paused by the court, watching silhouettes of families playing in the distance. This story of a misplaced basketball, a frightened phone call, and a refusal to accept prejudice had rippled outward, reshaping a neighborhood, inspiring a state, and touching hearts beyond Elmwood. It proved that when fear confronts empathy, empathy can win, one bounce at a time. In reflection, this story proves that lasting change thrives on human connection. Elmwood's journey lives on in every game played, every hand extended, every assumption challenged. Unity demands constant effort, but its rewards are limitless.